Welcome to another Third Apron podcast. I'm your host, Yossi Goslin. Back with me, as always, my co host, Sam Quinn. And we are now going to hit the Western Conference teams for our divisional trade deadline previews. We already did all the East teams. And today we're going to start with the Northwest teams. So we are going to get into each one, same format as the ones from before. And so, alphabetical order, we're going to start with the Denver Nuggets. So, the Denver Nuggets, they are now experiencing quite an injury bug. They are not going to have Jokic for at least a month, and their backup center, Valanciunas, is out for at least a month. Thankfully, they are going to be able to do something about it. So, as of recording, today's January 4th. Starting tomorrow, teams can sign 10-day contracts. So, they're probably going to find another big or two in the market. And what do they have? So the Nuggets, I think they're mainly going to look to the free agency market to try to find some more help in the immediate term. They are not hard cap to any of the aprons. They can exceed the first or second apron. They could theoretically go up to the second apron, about 15 million below, but I don't think that's realistic. You and I, Sam, both expect that if anything, they might look to get below the tax or about 400,000 above it. And I would assume that they are going to probably do something to get below it, especially because over the next week or two, they'll probably go a little further above when they sign some 10-day guys. But as far as bigger picture stuff, I don't think there is too much that they can do. Most of their moves was the offseason. The Michael Porter Jr. trade opened up a lot of flexibility for them to do a bunch of other stuff to deepen the roster. So they replaced Porter Jr. with Cam Johnson, who makes almost half as much. That gives them space to bring in Jonas Valanciunas. That gives them space to sign Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway while staying below the tax, but also to extend Christian Brown in the long term. And then they have a little more room for Peyton Watson. But as far as what they could do this year, they don't really have many assets to do anything. They don't have any first round picks to trade. They don't have any seconds except for one. They can only trade their 2032 second round pick. And they could trade pick swaps in some other years like 26, 28, 2030, 2031. But even those have some conditions on them. So they can't totally cleanly trade those. Either way, I I don't expect much from the Nuggets. If anything, if I had to predict a team that wouldn't do anything, I feel like it would be them.
Well, they're going to do something. I think it's pretty clear they are going to get below the tax this year, just because when you're 400,000 above it or whatever, it's kind of irresponsible not to get back below, just because then you're, turning away the big tax payout. I don't know what the tax payout would be this year. I think last I checked, it was like 12 or 13 million. They're not going to just turn that money away. So they are going to get below the tax one way or another. The other bit of business that they do have to do is find a way to convert Spencer Jones from a two-way to a standard contract, ideally a multi-year contract, because Spencer Jones is good and represents real important, not just like regular season depth, but someone who could play for them in the playoffs. So finding some solution to the Spencer Jones situation is going to be important, and they're going to have to clear out some room below the tax to do that. And then there's the longer term concern, which is next year. As of now, Denver is 1.4 million above the second apron for next season, and that does not include re-signing Peyton Watson. They have 12 players under contract. We both think it is unlikely that they are going to re-sign Peyton Watson, but either way, they have a huge tax bill coming next year. So we think it's important for them to get under this year's tax. And we also think they might look into making moves that address next year's bill. So you bring up pick swaps in, I think 31 is the easiest. It's the one that's the least encumbered with all these picks owed to the Thunder. I'm going to immediately throw something else at you as far as a way you could get below the tax, maybe help your present situation a little bit, and save some money for next year. Call up the Nets. You already owe them your 2032 first round pick. How would you like 2031 swaps on top of that? Like, really become invested in our decline, and maybe Jokic retires to hang out with his horses or whatever. Like, really invest. In exchange, you will be taking Hunter Tyson, Jalen Pickett, and Zeke Naji. and we will be taking Day'Ron Sharp back. So what does this accomplish for Denver? Gets them below the tax, gets them off of the Zeke Naji contract for next year, and gets them somebody to play center while Valanciunas and Jokic are out right now. I think this is the sort of trade you could make tomorrow.
I like it. The only thing is the only teams that have really tried to collect pick swaps. The Nets haven't been that team so far. They have some pick swaps, but it's mainly the Thunder and the Spurs. Those are the teams that value pick swaps the most. So I'm not saying I'm looking at the Thunder as a potential trade partner for the Nuggets, and I think any team that does a trade with the Thunder is going to be frowned upon by the rest of the league. But the Nuggets do have an extensive history trading with the Thunder. They owe them two more first round picks in 27 and 29. I wouldn't be surprised if they could. I think most teams are going to try to avoid trading pick swaps to the Thunder. I could see the Nuggets potentially doing something with them or the Spurs. I guess the Spurs are another team that if anyone who does a trade with them like that, everyone's going to get the rest of the league's going to get upset. Um,
Well, there's a
I like
solution
the
to all of
value.
this.
I just don't know if the Nets are like the team that is going to want to take a
Well,
pick swap. They just haven't been like that type of team.
there's an easy solution to this, though. We saw this at the 24 trade deadline when Dallas wanted Daniel Gafford and couldn't get him because they didn't have a pick to trade. So they went to the Thunder and they gave the Thunder a swap for a
Yep.
first round pick. The Thunder have such a surplus that what you could do if the Nets want an actual pick as opposed to a swap is just offer your 2031 swap to the Thunder for, insert crappy first round pick X to send to the Nets. And if the Thunder were willing to trade to get Daniel Gafford to Dallas, who eventually helped knock them out of that very postseason, I think they'd probably be open to helping Denver out for the right price. So I think that's the like the biggest move I could see Denver making, where you use a first round swap to get off of the Najee contract, which is going to be very important. As like I think we both assume that they would like to stay below the second apron next year. It's not an absolute; they might go slightly above it, but we don't think they're going to give Peyton Watson the like 20 million a year contract that he wants. They're not going to do what Cleveland has done where they're so far above it. If you could get off of Najee, then you could let Watson go, but otherwise keep the team together, which I think they would like. This is the way you do that, where you set up your books while also filling a short term need and getting below the tax this year. The other smaller things you could do is you have that 2032 second round pick. Could you just use that to like get off of one of Pickett or Tyson? Like, is there a smaller move you could do? Could you, I mean, like, if you put the 31 swap on the table, could you go to Detroit and be like, maybe just Paul Reed for Zeke Naji, something like that? Like,
So
there are other ways you can save money. I'm just saying the next trade is the easiest.
So here's what I came up with. Ultimately, I think it's a trade with Memphis. I don't think Memphis does it, but the type of trade I came up with that I think I would try to go for if I'm Denver is Zeke Naji in that 2032 second for John Conchar. John Conchar, same kind of money as Naji, just a little less, but he has one fewer year. Do you think Memphis would go for that?
No, I don't think they would, just because the extra year is the deal breaker. Like, why do you take
Yeah.
a second round pick for the extra year of money? It has to be a team like Brooklyn where like you can get an asset of genuine value, not like a throwaway second round pick. That's why, and they have the money or they have the cap flexibility too to take on that contract. And plus, you figure the Nets are going to be active enough on the trade market where a year from now or 2 years from now, when Zeke Naji's contract is a little bit shorter, they could actually use that matching salary in productive ways. Whereas to the Nuggets, that contract has just become such an albatross. And he's even like starting to play because Jonas and because Jokic are out. And it has not been pretty from what I've seen thus far. Like, that's just an $8 million anchor around their neck.
Yeah, I do want to just touch on the next year stuff because I feel like we kind of summed up their trade deadline. It's just can they get below the tax this year? As far as next year, I just kind of want to look into it a little bit because you brought up Peyton Watson, and they are over the second apron right now. It is going to be really interesting to see what they do because I don't think they're going to be able to stay below the second apron while keeping him. Even if they were to waive Valanciunas, who's only got a 2 million partial guarantee, and they're magically able to get off Zeke Naji, what's stopping another team from giving Peyton Watson a at least like an inflated 2-year deal to try to steal him from the Nuggets. We saw what it took for the Nuggets to let go of Contavious Caldwell Pope, but Peyton Watson's a lot younger, plays a more valuable position in the league right now. So I could see there being more interest. So if you're the Nuggets, I think you got to match on something. I I feel like you're just leaving a lot of value on the table on the Michael Porter Jr. trade if they let him go, because the big value is that they have all this extra room to keep Johnson, Brown, Watson. That's the biggest thing. I more than this year's trade deadline. I think that's like the biggest thing I'm keeping my eye on for the Nuggets. Are they able to keep them?
I don't think they are. I think they'll probably try to sign and trade him, but there's going to be so much interest from the specific teams that have cap space. Like, he makes so much sense for Chicago, given their limitations as far as defense on the perimeter goes and just how thin they are at forward. He makes so much sense for Utah, right? Like, the Jazz, number 30 in defense, their offense is very good. I think the Jazz make a lot of sense for Peyton Watson. And then the boogeyman here is we don't know what the Lakers are going to do, but all JJ Redick has been saying all year is we need guys who play hard. We need like big wings who defend and like play with hustle. That's Peyton Watson. I think they make a lot of sense for him. So I could see them working out a sign and trade where, like, maybe to avoid the drama of an offer sheet, they send Watson to Utah or Chicago and they get like a bad first round pick or a couple of seconds or somebody cheaper or whatever. I don't think there's any chance they match an offer sheet. I don't think they're taking any chances as far as like risking being $20 million above the second apron. I don't think they're going to want to waive Valanciunas. I don't think, like, he's been very important
Yeah.
to them. I think they just want him to be their backup center next year. So I don't think there's any chance they're matching an offer sheet. And I don't think they should trade him at the deadline, to be clear, because they have such a good chance of winning the 2026 championship. You can't weaken this year's team over long-term financial concerns. The
Yeah.
Porter for Cam Johnson trade was a viable basketball decision independent of the money, right? That was a financially driven trade to some extent, but you could argue, and I think we both thought at the time, that Cam Johnson was a better player than Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. has been better this year, to be sure, but that was a defensible basketball trade regardless of the money. Just trading Peyton Watson to avoid the drama of restricted free agency, you're just making your team worse this year. And there's nothing that this year's team really needs. It's not like you could trade Peyton Watson in such a way where, like, you take Watson plus Zeke Najee's money and you trade for some $10 million role player that addresses the need for you. No, their need is on defense. They're 20th on defense, and Peyton Watson is maybe their best defensive player. So I don't see any reason to trade Watson this year. I think they're going to lose him in the offseason. It's just a matter of, do you sign and trade him or does he just walk for nothing? The last thing I think I just want to go over with you, I know this is, very specific, nerdy. They're going to figure it out one way or another. What exactly can they do with Spencer Jones? Like, they're going to be able to convert him, but they're going to wait until the last minute. Can you get him on a multi-year deal? If you clear the room under the tax now, could you like incentivize him to sign for longer at a cheaper number? Like, just walk me through the Spencer Jones situation.
So the Wolves, since they're over the first apron, they have the tax pyramid level, which is a 2-year contract. So the only thing they can do to incentivize him on a deal is to give him a higher salary this year than the prorated minimum. I don't think that's really even going to be necessary. That's more so if you're going to tie the guy to like 3 or 4 years, which they can't. I would, and I think this kind of mostly applies to all the main 2-way conversion candidates. I think all these guys are mostly going to just get 2-year deals with a team option on the second year. We saw that more last year than in previous years, where teams would use their mid-level to give them more than 2 years. So, anyways, that's all the Nuggets can give. Oh, you know what? Oh my God, I'm looking at the Wolves when I said that. I'm sorry.
You
The
said the
Nuggets
Wolves
have.
and you were confusing.
I was already looking at the Wolves, which is the next team we're going to discuss. I'm sorry. The Nuggets have the full mid-tax mid-level. I'm sorry, the full non-tax pyramid level, so they can give him a 3-4 year deal. If they, yeah, I guess it just depends if what he wants. Then that's on him. Does he want to take a 3-4 year minimum deal, which is the most likely thing. Maybe if the Nuggets get below the tax enough, they could give him enough of a first year salary to make it to incentivize him to do it. Otherwise, they'll probably just give him like a 2 year minimum team option at the end, and then they take him to restricted free agency and figure it out from there.
So this is why I really like the Nets deal. Aside from all of the other benefits that I laid out, you could also get far enough below the tax that you could give Spencer Jones like $5 million to incentivize him to sign for 4 years. And if you could get like a good reserve at forward, the hardest position to fill, for, I don't know, 4 years, 20 million total, that at least gives you like cost control at a position where you're about to lose Peyton Watson. That's another reason to look into a trade like that. If you can get off of Zeke Naji and use that as a way to get Spencer Jones locked in as long as possible, I think that's important, because you don't want a situation where like you lose Peyton Watson and then Spencer Jones breaks out and it's like, oh, it's okay. We don't miss Watson because we have Jones. Oh, now Spencer Jones is going into restricted free agency and we're doing this whole thing all over again.
Yeah, it's just like a bigger picture thing. I'm just very curious what the Nuggets' appetite to spend is, because they've been in the tax for 3 years in a row now. They currently are in the repeater tax. So they are paying higher tax rates, but right now they're probably not going to pay the tax this year. That's not going to get them below the repeater next year. So I know we're going to talk about the Wolves again next, but the Michael Porter Jr. trade reminds me a lot of the Wolves trading Karl Anthony Towns, where they made the choice, okay, we don't want to pay him $50+ million. Instead, we're going to break that down into keeping multiple guys: Randall, Nasri, DiVincenzo. They didn't keep Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I'm sure we'll get into that. That's really hurting. That seems to be like the biggest thing hurting them from last year. But with the Nuggets, this was mostly about keeping more of their guys, and we don't know if they're gonna be able to keep Watson. With Valanciunas, I think they're just gonna have to keep him. I know that while we record, the Nuggets are gonna play the Nets, so Daron Holmes gonna have another chance to have a lot of minutes, but so far has not shown enough to show that the Nuggets can just comfortably wade Valanciunas. I think if the Nuggets could, they'd waive him after a deep playoff run, let him go to Greece like he wanted to last summer. And that's only if Holmes is ready, and then they could get like another solid backup for the minimum. I don't think that's viable right now. So I think they're gonna need to show an appetite to spend next year, no matter what. They're not gonna be below the repeater tax. This year's just gonna be like a break from the tax. But I would be pretty disappointed if I'm a Nuggets fan if they let Peyton Watson go. Even if he gets some like Bruce Brown level offer sheet, like a 2 year, 20-something million a year contract with a team option on the next year, I think you just got to match it. You got to spend whatever it takes right now, because their margin for error is slowly decreasing each year, with all the players slowly getting more injury prone, getting a little older, but they have nothing else to do. They have no picks to trade. They have no trades to make. This Porter Jr. was like their last lifeline, and they got to keep everything they can. And that means they're going to have to spend a lot of money. And they wouldn't even like bringing back Watson on a big deal wouldn't even make them like the most expensive team next year, I don't think. So they just got to spend money.
The other part of this is that the Cronkies are not some mom and pop local owner or something. They're not like, they can afford this. They own the Avalanche too. They own the Rams too. I'm sorry, the reason you own a professional sports franchise is to compete for championships. It might be 50 years before the Nuggets have another player as good as Nikola Jokic. This is the best player they've ever had. This is the best player in the world. They have no future draft capital to replace him with after he's gone. Like, it's right now. Be as cheap as you want 6-7 years from now when Jokic is gone. Make all of your money then. Fine. Right now is the time to be competing for championships. And if that means paying some huge tax bill to keep Peyton Watson, like, so be it. That's why you own a team. Like, the Nuggets have been known for being cheap in a lot of other ways for a long time. They practiced in their arena. They didn't have a dedicated facility. I think they were one of the last teams to get a G League team. Like, the Nuggets have been known as one of the cheaper teams in the NBA for a long time. That's even been reflected in some of the ways in which they've managed personnel. At this stage, with Jokic being this good, it would just be malpractice from ownership to let Watson go. And I think we both think that they're going to do that.
Yeah. No, I'm inclined to believe probably more than likely he's gonna get an offer they don't like, and they'll just let him go. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we will move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So the Minnesota Timberwolves, one of the top five-ish teams in the West right now, and that like not
I
like
love
true
how we say
contender.
top five-ish when we know like the Lakers are 6. We don't even have to say top 6.
Yeah, but then it's like you got like what I would say is like the true contenders, like OKC, San Antonio right now, and then you've got Houston, Minnesota, Denver kind of in a tier. And then yeah, that's kind of more of a slight at the Lakers. Like they're in the
Yeah.
6, but not really. The Timberwolves right now, they are over the tax, over the first apron. So what are their restrictions? They cannot take in more salaries than they're sending out in a trade. They don't have the full mid-level. They have the taxpayer mid-level, which they probably won't really use on anyone at this point. I think the biggest thing about their first apron status is they can't sign any buyout players. In our last episode, we discussed guys like CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton as potential buyout candidates who would make sense on the Wolves, but they can't sign those guys if bought out. And they're about $3.6 million below the second apron. They're not hard capped to it. They could go over it if they need to, if they have to like sign extra players, if a bunch of injuries happen. But you and I both agree they're not going to want to exceed it. That was the point of the cat trade. They just want to try to stay below the second apron and pay like a modest tax bill. Now, as far as trades, they've been linked to a lot of different guards over the past few months, but they're probably even more limited than the Nuggets in terms of what they can do. They can't trade any firsts. They can trade 2 seconds in 2031 and 2032, and then they can only trade 2 pick swaps in 26 and 28. They cannot trade a 32 pick swap. It is frozen as a result of being over the first apron last year.
Second apron, not first apron.
Second apron last year. So not much they could do other than maybe hope. Kind of like with the Nuggets, there's a team they can work with who would be interested in their pick swaps to get something.
I can think of one. I've got a trade for you right off the bat.
You want to
So
go
right
for
now,
it? Or, all right.
Yeah, let's just go for it. Right now, Minnesota's 2026 first round pick is slated to be number 22 overall. The Washington Wizards have Oklahoma City's first round pick, which is slated to be number 30 with a bullet. What if the Timberwolves went to the Wizards and said, "We'll give you our own first round pick for Oklahoma City's, but we want 3 second round picks in exchange for moving down." The reason being, the Timberwolves have been linked to so many players and they're so limited in terms of the assets that they have. Getting a couple of extra seconds to trade could be the difference between getting somebody and not. And they're only moving down in the first round. They're not moving out of the first round entirely. So the Wizards move up, let's say 6, 7, 8 slot, something like that. But they dip into their surplus of second round picks to help the Timberwolves with whatever else they're trying to do.
Yeah, I could see the Wizards doing that. They did a similar type trade with the Sixers last year, and that's probably even better for the Wizards. Oh, they're not losing a pick; they just moving up a couple spots. So I like it. I think that makes sense. Do you think that would be enough for them to get some of the guards that they've been linked to in the past few months?
I think
If
it'd be
getting those extra
difficult.
seconds.
I think if they're really going to swim in the deep end of the guard pool, they have to trade away players, and we can get into who might make sense and blah, blah, blah. But having those extra seconds could do a number of things for you. Like Kobe White is a name that we're definitely going to talk about. I think they're hoping that they could get Kobe White if they do that, just by offering like their young guys, the Dillinghams and the Terrence Shannons, and like maybe it's Berenger, maybe it's one of these other younger guys on the bench. I don't know who it would be. But having second round picks for a trade like that would be pretty significant. If you're talking about like an all-star kind of guy, I don't know that second round picks are that important. But the other part of this is like moving down 5, 6 slots in the first round to get multiple bites at the second round apple. I think that even independent of other trades could be valuable for them, just because they're going to be so expensive moving forward that Yeah, I'd kind of like to have as many second round picks as possible to try to find somebody cheap.
I'm looking at that example because I always felt that if the Wolves are going to successfully get Kobe White, they're probably going to have to trade DiVincenzo. But I understand you're coming from the mindset that they'll probably hope to turn Rob Dillingham as a primary value to get a guy like Kobe White. I looked into it for next year. I'm like, can you afford to have all their guys, Edwards, Gobert, Randall, McDaniels, Nasri, while keeping DiVincenzo and then adding Kobe White on his next contract? It's actually kind of doable while
Yes,
them trying
I
to
was
stay
going to say
below
the
this.
same thing.
Like if you're replacing, let's say Kobe gets something starting in the low 20s, then yeah, that could actually still work keeping them under the second apron. So it's actually not too crazy. And we've discussed that type of framework. I could see the Bulls settling for something for that if they just decide they don't want to spend whatever it takes to keep Kobe White.
Yeah, the deal I have lined up in front of me is Kobe White and Javon Carter for Mike Conley, Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon, and 3 second round picks, which would be the picks they get by making that trade with Washington. But even if they don't make that trade with Washington, they do have their own second round picks to trade. They have a couple of second round picks coming from other teams. And I think some of them are reasonably valuable. Well, actually, the ones I have in front of me aren't. Like they have Cleveland's in 27, they have Denver or Golden State's in 26. So those aren't great, but you could get better picks from the Wizards if you needed them. I think the Bulls, if they were to trade Kobe White to Minnesota, the guy they would want is Berenjay because their center situation is in such flux. I have said this repeatedly on this show. I think he's very good, and I think he's going to be important as Rudy Gobert ages. So I would not trade him, even if it was for Kobe White. But I'm just saying that's probably going to be somebody that Chicago brings up in these negotiations.
I mean, getting Kobe White would be, I think, the best case scenario. I don't think they're going to be looking at anyone making more because when you
Well,
go,
unless they include another player.
well, they've been linked to guys like John Morant, I'm not DeJounte Murray, but like that's a guy that I've kind of thought maybe they would go after if he comes back anytime soon and shows he's impactful, which so far there's still no timeline on his return. But even getting like a $30 million player, like also Harden, they've been linked to. Okay, Harden and John Moran make $40 million. You need to trade one of Randall or Gobert or Naz Reid to get that going. I just don't think the Wolves are gonna do that. So a while ago, like maybe 2 months ago, I thought, okay, well, you know who I could see the Wolves ultimately settling on is a guy like Dennis Schroeder, who I think will probably get traded again because that's a very easy match for the Wolves. Cap restrictions. They just need to get to that 13 or 14 million, whatever it is. Kobe White makes the same amount. Much better player than Dennis Schroeder. So if they can get, so that's like, I think we're like, that's kind of the realistic salary figure, that like mid-level exception where they're mainly doing Conley or Bones Highland to help match. That's kind of what they're the best case they're looking for. Otherwise, there are some, if they still, I don't even think they necessarily need a point guard. I think they just need another another good player, another good
Well,
guard or
this
wing.
is an important thing to bring up because they lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the
Yes.
offseason, obviously. And something that's been a concerning trend for them over a few years. 2 years ago, when they were almost the number one seed, they were the number one seed most of the year. When Rudy Gobert left the floor, their defense didn't drop off at all. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker was a big part of that. But they also had Karl Anthony Towns. They didn't have DiVincenzo. Like the roster was a little bit different, but basically the defense with Gobert on or off was the same. Last year, when Gobert went to the bench, they were 5 points worse on defense per 100 possessions. That's a decline, but it's a reasonable one for an all defense level guy like Gobert. This year, Minnesota's defense is 10 points per 100 possessions worse when Rudy Gobert goes to the bench. They are very clearly missing some sort of defensive minded reserve who can come in and have the impact that Alexander Walker had. Now, if they go for a point guard, they're probably not going for somebody like that. I looked around to see if there was like a defensive minded wing they could get, and I just couldn't find the guy. But I do think that's as pressing a need for them as quote unquote point guard is.
Yeah, and they got Nickeil Alexander Walker as a throw-in from the Mike Conley. When they got brought in Mike Conley for D'Lo, they got Nickeil Alexander Walker just a throw-in. I'm trying to think, is there anyone that's like very like I can't imagine I can't really think of who that would be. Like I don't think the Bulls like I'm looking at the Bulls if they were to get Kobe White, is there a guy making around the minimum or less who could be that sneaky guy? I don't see who that could be
Can I
realistically.
throw something your way? Just hear me
Go
out.
ahead.
This is kind of out there. I have talked on a couple of episodes about some sort of Rob Dillingham for Jaden Ivey trade with the idea that Detroit probably not going to re-sign Jaden Ivey. Would they like to reset the rookie salary clock with a guy in a similar draft range as Ivey, but with 2 more years of team control after this one? And for Minnesota, you'd just be saying, we really believe in Jaden Ivey. Let's get him and we'll figure out the contract situation after the season. Something that I came up with was the Timberwolves would be getting Jaden Ivey and Matisse Thybulle. The Pistons would get Dillingham and Mike Conley, and the Blazers would just save a bunch of money by getting Joe Ingles and Bones Highland. So the idea there would be Thybulle has barely played just because of injuries the last couple of years, but when he's been healthy, could maybe be something like what Nickeil Alexander-Walker was for you in the past. And then you also take the shot on Jaden Ivey. I think the Pistons probably don't do that without getting picks involved. They'd have to really like Dillingham, and I
That's
don't have
what
any
I'm
reason to believe they
thinking.
would.
That
But
I'm thinking maybe the Blazers just get Dillingham and then the Pistons just get a bunch of picks. I think that's more likely.
okay, but like some
Yeah.
version of that where like I guess well if the Blazers are getting Dillingham, then you're not getting Ivy if you're Minnesota. You could just do something separately for Thibault, but like man, given the risks involved with Matisse Thybulle from a health standpoint and a shooting standpoint, I don't think you could give up a number 8 pick this quickly for Thibault.
Yeah. But if the Wolves were able to get a guy like Ivy, probably same kind of contract structure as Kobe White, I would imagine this summer, they'd probably get like a similar outcome. So that would also fit under the Wolves' upcoming payroll structure. Any two-way guys to on the lookout? Not really. I don't think they're gonna convert any of these guys. So they have an
How are we
extra
talking
roster
about
spot.
two-way guys when we still have the mega trades to talk about?
I'm just saying they got an extra roster spot. I would imagine they'll just try to get the best player available with it.
I'm steering this conversation back towards the fun names. LaMelo Ball and Musa Diabate for Naz Reid, Mike Conley, Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon, and 4 second-round picks.
Hmm.
I don't think Charlotte's ready to do that.
I think I do that if I'm the Wolves. I
I
think
would have been
Charlotte
the
could probably
Wolves,
hold.
yeah.
Yeah, I
The,
think Charlotte could do a little better if they hold on.
the Hornets are playing pretty well right now. I don't think that they feel any great need to shake things up. Plus, Musa Diabate is good. He's like a good 15-minute player, but he is still good. I found another point guard trade that I kind of thought long and hard about. So, what about the Toronto Raptors? Emmanuel Quickly and Sandro Mamukelashvili for Naz Reid, Mike Conley, Joe Ingles, and Bones Highland. I think the Timberwolves say no to this, but I think Quickly would actually be kind of perfect for what Minnesota needs because he's a point guard who's not going to be super high usage, could not fix your bench offense, but like address your bench offense because we know he's like good as the primary ball handler in bench lineups. And he actually defends a little bit. Like if you're defensively, if you're 1, 2, 3 is Quickly Edwards and McDaniels, that's very, very good. You get Mamu as a replacement for Naz Reid. He's not obviously Naz Reid, but he's very, very good, at least as a backup offensive center. And I think Naz Reid is like perfect for what Toronto needs. Having a center who could shoot like that, if you have Scotty Barnes as your power forward, or at least your defensive power forward, I think that could maybe offset some of the defensive decline that comes with having Naz Reid at center. I do think Reid in Toronto is like a really, really interesting fit. I think Minnesota says no, and I think their fans would like kill me if they heard me suggesting they trade Naz Reid. But I spent some time thinking about that one.
I'm trying to see if there's a way the Wolves can get Quickly without trading Naz Reid or
Well, they
even
could trade
Spencer.
Julius Randle. Like they could trade like
I'm trying to see if they could just add Quickly. It's not possible. They can't make
no.
the money
It would
work.
have to be Reid or Randle or McDaniels in the deal, but
Yeah.
they're not giving up McDaniel. Like that's not happening.
I don't like the Naz Reid contract. I don't think the Wolves are ready to move on from him just yet. I think it's going to take him a little longer for them to realize, okay, you know what? we need the size, but maybe not quite at this rate that we've given Nas Reed. I don't. Maybe that starts those types of conversations. Maybe begin next year.
Nas
If they
Reed
need.
is the sort of contract that makes sense when your best players are on rookie deals because he's kind of a luxury player, right? This offensive centric backup big who can't defend well enough to play center, but defensively isn't quite quick enough to play power forward. Like he's kind of a luxury player, right? He's a little bit like a better version of Bobby Portis, where you love having him on your team, but when you think about like the boxes that you have to check as a team, like rim protection at center, high end offensive engine at guard, like perimeter defender, like all of these expensive niches, it's just very hard to fit all of those guys in when you also have Nas Reed as a luxury making it's 22 this year. Does it go up? Like what's the
Yeah,
structure of that deal?
yeah, 8% raises goes up 21, 23,
Yeah,
25, something like that.
that's just like he's kind of a luxury player. And I think he makes more sense on a team that has savings in some other way that you can justify having a luxury making over 20 million a year.
I want to ask you one last bigger picture thing about the Wolves, and it's about the nature of all these teams, particularly highlighting the Wolves who have traded all their picks to form a roster that can win now, maximize the present. Mainly, they traded for first Rudy Gobert. And lots of other teams have traded all their firsts for somebody. And I think in one way, it's kind of hurt them in the future, where with now it's kind of depressed the market in terms of what other teams can offer. Because once you have less teams that can offer really anything viable for a high end starter or an all star, then that could decrease the general return on those said players. We're already kind of expecting that with guys like even Giannis or AD, but and it kind of did happen to the Wolves when they traded Towns. I don't think there was going to be a big market for him anyways because of the contract, but I was underwhelmed with the return. I felt like compared to what a lot of other All Stars went to, and even some like more inferior players to Cat, I think that may have been also a result of a lot of other teams that may have been interested in Cat just not having anything to offer. Now I'm starting to wonder if that phenomenon might swing back in favor of a team like the Wolves, where if there are players, and we'll just use Kobe White as the example. Now, what is the market doing? Most teams have guards, so there might not be that much interest in White. Maybe there's not going to be a big appetite to pay him. Maybe there just won't be a lot of teams that normally would want. They can't offer that much. Do you think this could end up benefiting a team like the Wolves that already don't have anything to offer to have actually maybe even come out on top to get a guy like him or any of these other targets?
Well, I think the big thing is like either you have room in your salary structure for a guy like Kobe White or you don't. We don't know what Chicago's plans are. If Chicago has come to the conclusion that they're not going to re-sign Kobe White, and to be clear, I don't know that they have come to that conclusion, they probably will just trade him for the best offer. And because there are so few teams that can make good offers, that does open the door for Minnesota a little bit. So like theoretically, yeah, I could see that happening. I want to go back to the quote unquote lackluster return for Karl Anthony Towns. I think if the Wolves still had Towns, they'd be in the same situation that the Hawks are in with Trae Young, where they just have a guy who nobody wants that salary for, period. I think we'd be hearing, like, why would anybody want to trade for a max contract big man that doesn't defend? That was why they traded Karl Anthony Towns when they did. His stock was reasonably high. They just made the Western Conference Finals. I think they looked at that and said, we have an opportunity to split the Towns contract into two players who we believe in the aggregate are more valuable. I think the jury's still out on that. And ultimately, what we've seen thus far is both Minnesota and New York are relatively happy with how that played out. I think both of those teams got what they needed out of that trade, but they also got a first round pick. Like they got genuinely positive value out of that trade. I think if they still had Towns now, they'd be sort of sitting on a contract that they couldn't trade, and that would be doing very serious damage to their books. But the other part of that I wanted to bring up was you mentioned how few teams have picks to make trades like this now. I also wonder if that puts teams like Oklahoma City and San Antonio in like ridiculously powerful situations where like say they want a guy like Kobe White and nobody else has picks to trade for them. Are they going to be able to cherry pick veterans for like pennies on the dollar because they're the teams that control all the picks. I mean, Oklahoma City's not in that position right now because their books are so stuffed that they're not like going to be making trades for random deadline veterans for the most part. But I do wonder if that's going to be like a side consequence where when all of the picks are owed to like 5 or 6 teams, are those teams going to be able to just go cherry pick whatever veterans they want out of the more desperate teams?
Well, on the contrary, maybe it hurts them. Maybe teams start to look at OKC, who just won a championship and are on the cusp of a potential dynasty, and say, you know what, you have all these picks and you're gonna potentially get 2 lottery picks in this draft. We're not gonna trade with you. We don't want to help you at all anymore. So good luck figuring out what to do with your picks. I think most likely it'll all work out for the Thunder. They'll be able to optimize the use of their extra picks, but it's just an interesting dynamic where on paper you see 2 teams have all the picks and very few teams have none, and that should help the teams with the picks hurt the teams without. But maybe in some situations it might actually help the teams with no picks. So
more than anything, I think we're going to see more player for player trades, like more challenge trades. And Minnesota has so many good players that do such different things that they're really in a position to benefit off of that, because maybe there are only a handful of teams that need Naz Reid, but those teams do exist. Maybe there are only a handful of teams that really want Dante DiVincenzo, but those teams exist and they're different from the teams that want Naz Reid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Timberwolves have a player that would appeal to basically any team in the NBA. So if you are trying to make player for player trades, they can kind of trade with almost anybody. And that's an interesting position to be in.
yeah, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will get to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Oklahoma City Thunder, very simple situation with them. They are right at the luxury tax, $1 million below, with a full 15-man roster. I think it's pretty obvious what they'll likely do, but Sam, I'm going to kick it to you in a sec. I want to give you an option how you want to go about this, because most likely they're just going to stay under the tax. This is their last year. They'll be under the tax before they live in it, once they have to start paying Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren on their contracts. I have an idea of what I think they will do in the trade deadline. Do you want to get into that first, or do you want to get into fantasy basketball?
Fantasy basketball. We'll save the rational stuff at the end.
All right.
So, the Thunder have no needs. They are great at everything. The only thing they are not good at is offensive rebounding. They're dead last in the NBA in offensive rebounding. That is a choice for them. They are more focused on transition defense. Other than that, they are good to great, and in most cases great at everything. Like, there's this thought like, oh, are the Thunder like only scoring so much because of transition and steals? They're second in half court points per play on offense. Like, anything that you think they're not great at, they're actually great at. Oh, is the shooting a little bit shaky? They're in the top 10 in 3-point percentage. They're fine. They're great at everything. There are no win now trades that they should be thinking about making. The real issue that we have to talk about is that as of right now, they are $24 million above the second apron for next season. And that does not include draft picks. With draft picks, your cap sheet has them $38 million above the second apron. If the season ended right now, they would pick number 8 from the Clippers and number 19 from the Philadelphia 76ers. They could also have another pick in the 9, 10, 11 range from the Utah Jazz, depending on how their season ends and how the lottery goes. So they're going to be very, very expensive next season. Now, they have team options to address this. Isaiah Hartenstein, $28.5 million team option. Lou Dort, $18.2 million option. Kenrich Williams, $7.2 million option. They can team option their way out of the second apron. But if you want to re-sign those guys, even if you're doing it on longer-term deals that are team-friendly, you're probably still going to be a second apron team, which brings up a question that I've been thinking of. I think it might make some sense for the Thunder to consider a Lou Dort trade if you can trade him at the top of the market. So why do I think that? Number one, it's a down year for him. He is one of the only players in the Oklahoma City rotation that has a negative EPM. He's not making his threes this year, 33.8%. The other big thing that really concerns me is that he is getting all of these clutch minutes that I don't think he really should be getting. He's second on the team in clutch minutes at 55. Nobody else. I think third place is at like 40. I think their plan in the playoffs should be obviously you close with SGA, with Chet, and with J Dub. But I don't want Dort on the team taking closing minutes away from Caruso, from Kason Wallace. And sometimes they might either need to go double big and close with Hartenstein, or they might need the extra offensive punch of closing with AJ Mitchell. So I thought to myself, is there a way you could trade Lou Dort for so much value that you justify not making the team worse this year? I don't think that's the way to put it, but like giving away a beloved team figure who could have been a Thunder for life. I don't know what the phrase Thunderman for life, Thunderbolt for life, whatever we're going to call it. So I looked around the league. Obviously, there are a ton of teams who could use a 3-and-D wing like Lou Dort. There is like you could trade him to half the league. I think there might be some level of concern over the shooting this year, but ultimately players like this are just so hard to get that I do think they could get good value. I think the obvious team that they should start this with is, hey, Milwaukee, the one thing you need is a perimeter defender who can guard multiple positions. If you get Lou Dort, that could save the Giannis era. You already have this great shooting offense, second and effective field goal percentage. You have this great front court with Giannis and with Miles Turner. If you get Lou Dort, that's Drew Holiday reborn for you. You can be a championship team again, but it's going to cost you. We want your unprotected 2031 first round pick. We're going to make the money work by you're going to trade Bobby Portis. You're going to trade him to a third team. We're going to get an expiring contract out of this. And we're going to get your unprotected 2031 first round pick. What do you think?
I don't see OKC doing that. I don't think they're going to make those preemptive salary dump trades this year. I think they'll figure it out next year. Yeah, Lou Dort's not playing at the level he was last year, but I think they just want to keep the depth because this is the last year their team's going to be this deep. There will be some changes. I don't know how significant they'll be. I'm anticipating that they're going to try to trade guys like Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins and hopefully replace them with some upcoming draft picks. So I just now that I would take that. I love that value for Lou Dort. I don't think he's worth a 2031 unprotected pick by any team, even one, especially one whose outlook is as grim as the Bucks. So I don't think, that's a great value. I think OKC still passes on it. I think they just want to maximize this year and deal with it later. I get where your head's at with that. Now, the other thing is that team option. The only reason I would say OKC considers something like that is if there is going to be some like teams giving some, let's call them spite free agency offers for guys like Isaiah Hartenstein or Lou Dort. Try to give them like really big, maybe front loaded deals that try to steal them from the Thunder because teams are going to want to hurt them as much as possible. I was thinking hopefully with these team options, they could decline them and then restructure them, maybe get them on something a little slightly lower. But if the Thunder are going to make another run to the finals, I do wonder if there are going to be teams out there that are going to be very aggressive on these guys. If the Thunder get a little sense of that, okay, maybe do consider one of these types of trades, in which case that's incredible value. You're not sending Dort to a team that could hurt you. So in that case, yes, I would take it. I don't think the Bucks should do that. I don't think they should trade their 2031 first at all. I would say though, the preemptive trade is mostly like a Joe or a Wiggins type. What if they could get something for them now? Probably not. I think you're right. It's probably going to have to be a Dort or Isaiah Hartenstein.
Yeah, they're not getting if they could get something for Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins because the contracts are so good, but it's not going to be anything like this. Like the reason you move first on Dort is because there's so much demand for players like Dort that you could get something really, really good. I'm not saying that precludes you from considering other financially motivated trades, but like when you move first, look at like what the Thunder got when they traded Serge Ibaka when nobody thought Serge Ibaka was available. They got Domantas Sabonis, Victor Oladipo, and did they get something else in that deal? I don't know, but anyway, that got them Paul George, and Paul George got them Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Was Ilyasova in that trade? Anyway,
yeah.
Like my point is, when you move quickly on players that the league doesn't think of are available, you tend to get a premium back. I think you could 100% get a premium for Lou Dort, just considering how valuable players in that archetype are. And I'm not going to sit here and say Lou Dort is declining. Like, he's in his mid 20s, whatever. Like, he might just be having a down shooting year. I think it's very clear that Kason Wallace is going to be in that role long term. Like, Kason
Yeah.
Wallace is the more valuable long term player. He's the one that you're going to want to pay. I just think if you move quickly, you can get a better deal.
Yeah.
You could also just pick up the team option and trade him in the offseason as an expiring contract. But unless you're trading him to a team with cap space, you're taking money back, and that's not really addressing your apron situation.
Yeah, I just think they're going to want it for this year, keep as many of their positive defensive guards and wings as possible, because between Jalen, SGA, Caruso, Dort, Cason Wallace, those are all like all defense level guys. And that is their edge, having just unlimited options there. And it's like the only way I could really see the Thunder losing is if like 3 of those guys are hurt, and that's happens early in the regular season. A lot of those guys will be absent, and that really changes the game for the Thunder. So I think they got to maximize it, even if Dort's not gonna hit his shots. I think they just want to keep as many of these guys as possible for this playoff run, and go from there. Now, my idea is even crazier. It also involves the Bucks. So
Okay.
the Thunder just lost 3 times in a row to the Spurs. What if, do you think that that has any potential? I'm thinking, what if the Thunder are feeling, okay, you know what? Maybe we don't have quite enough to beat the Spurs this year, and maybe they're going to be a big problem for us in the future. I have alluded to this in the past. I could see the Thunder having the best offer for Giannis, and it wouldn't even require them trading any of their stars. So this is going to become more of like the Bucks section than the Thunder section, but I'm just going to get to the offer. The Thunder, they offer Isaiah Hardenstein, Lou Dort, Usman Jang, mainly for salary matching, and Nikola Topic. And then it's all about the draft picks after that. I would probably say they have to include one really good first round pick, namely that Clippers pick, to really.
I'm sorry, one?
Oh, I'm saying one. Hold on. No, I'm saying one really good one. First, I'm talking about the quality ones, which would be the Clippers pick. That one we know for sure. Like that. Now the Clippers have been a little better. I think they're gonna cool off pretty soon. But even if they're gonna top out here in like the 9th range, that's gonna be a very high quality pick. So I'm just gonna be vague about the picks because the Thunder have enough picks, I think, to make the best offer. Like they could keep putting more picks on picks to top the next best offer. So do you think after what happened with the Spurs, the Thunder would consider doing something like this?
It just seems so out of character for them. Like, they've never been the sort of team that does this. And like, even before Jalen Williams broke out and Chet Holmgren like broke out as well, I guess, like they weren't really linked to any of these like high end stars that potentially are on the market. And then the other part of this is like, would Giannis resign in Oklahoma City? Like,
no,
you
it's a rental.
Assume,
OKC's going into this as he's a rental for this year and next year. If he wants to stay, he stays.
If you're willing to give up the 4 or 5 first round picks, whatever it is, couldn't you shop around for like somebody a bit younger, somebody a bit more eager to stay on your team, somebody with more team control? Like, can we just like, I mean, if we're going to have this conversation, let's have it. Like, is Giannis the guy you offer that stuff for? Or like hypothetically, like, what if you went to the Mavericks and you were like 2 first round picks for Anthony Davis? Like, we'll go for the older guy and make ourselves impenetrable this year, but we're not going to give up 5 first round picks. We'll give up 2.
I don't even know if they have to give up that many first round picks for Giannis. Now, I'll just take a step back because ultimately I don't think the Thunder are even remotely interested in doing that.
No, fantasy basketball, we know.
I want to get into it from the Bucks perspective, and this is the more interesting part for me, why I bring up a potential Giannis to the Thunder trade. If I'm the Bucks, I think I'd want it out there. Maybe not like through a big report, but at least through the grapevine, that, oh, the Thunder have made a significant offer for Giannis. The one basically that I propose. It doesn't include any of their star players, and it has enough draft equity to make the Bucks comfortable enough to send Giannis to the Thunder to pair them with their other three stars. Do you think the fear of the Thunder pulling off something like that could be a way the Bucks to reclaim leverage over, say, teams like the Spurs or Rockets to actually put up a real offer to prevent the Thunder from actually pulling something off like that?
I mean, sure, you do want it out in the grapevine, but there's a big difference between like gossip about something like that and the actual fear that it's going to happen. Like, no, I don't think the Spurs and the Rockets are going to be moved. I think they're just happy with what they have. They're not going to be bullied into making a trade that they don't want to make. So it's a fun idea. I
Yeah.
can't see them making a trade like this, considering the circumstances of it being a rental. But I'm looking over the league right now, and I'm just wondering, is there a star out there that it might make sense for them to make that kind of trade for? Like, what if they just did that for Lowry Markkinen, who has,
I
I don't know, a million years left on his contract?
So I thought about Larry Markkinen as a Thunder target when I started Third Apron 2 years ago. I had a video where they traded for him. They traded all their picks and mainly just salary matching. Um, Now, if it's going to involve, so that was before they used their cap space on Isaiah Hardenstein, and I think that was a better move. You keep all your picks and you get a you you I I think that, well, let's just answer this and then move on to the realistic stuff. Like, would getting Giannis or Lowry be the thing that definitively puts OKC over the top of San Antonio?
I mean, yeah, if they made a trade where it was like Hartenstein and Dort as the matching salary and they bring in an all NBA player, they would win the championship if they stayed healthy. Like, can you imagine a closing lineup of SGA, Case and Wallace, J Dub, Markkinen, and Chet? Like, that's game over. I don't know. You're losing to that team. It's over.
I want to say, yeah, probably. I'm just I'm just trying to like dig a little deeper, but it seems that it does seem that cut and dry.
No.
Okay, so let's get into the actual stuff. I think I know what they're gonna do. So I'm gonna pull up their cap sheet again. 1 million below the tax, and they. I think there's two ways they can go about this. One, I think they could still use another big man. The simplest solution would be converting Brandon Carlson, which I think they're going to try to do anyways. So they would need to create a roster spot. You could try to trade Usman Jang, see if you could clear him and with a second. But you'll save a lot more space that way. So is there a way they can clear two roster spots? Maybe like you trade Jang for a veteran big who makes a little less, and then could you trade someone else or waive someone? I That's the bigger challenge. I'm not sure what other roster spot is expendable if you're trying to preserve the Jang roster spot for another big man and then use another one to convert Carlson.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty straightforward. I have no real notes on that because it's so dull and so straightforward.
Yeah.
Can I get you something that's a little bit more exciting than that, but still
Yeah.
somewhat within the realm of possibility? So they have this Utah pick that's top 8 protected. And right now it looks like Utah's going to keep it, but you've talked about Utah potentially wanting to maybe be a little bit more competitive. Keontae George is breaking out right now. They obviously still have Lowry Markkinen. Could you do something that compels Utah to remove the protection on that pick so they don't have to worry about it? Like, could you go to Utah and say, hey, well, let's move the protection from top 8 to top 2 or something? And in exchange, we'll give you the Philly pick this year. So like OKC would basically be moving up from like number 18, 19 to number like 10, 11, whatever. The Jazz could try to win in peace, but they still have the upside of if the lottery god smiled on them, they could potentially move up and have a very high pick. Is there something there?
I don't
I
know
think
how.
now that I think now that Utah is like firmly in 7th and we know they're going to do shenanigans in March and April, they're probably just going to let it ride. But
Yeah.
I do wonder if there's a way that OKC could get some cost certainty there, because that pick doesn't convert into seconds, right? It just evaporates.
I think they get a second. I'm gonna check right now.
Still, that's like, I don't know. I'd be trying to turn that asset into something a little bit more valuable.
Oh yeah, nothing. Nope, it just extinguished.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you could come up with something with Utah to like, hey, we go for the play in, we'd be happy with like the number 12 or number 13 pick, and we'll give you another pick, like something to consider, I guess. But I think Utah now is in a comfortable enough position to keep their pick that they're not going to bother.
Yeah, I could also just see no team wanting to trade with the Thunder. They just outright waive Usman Jang, and they still have $1 million in space. You just use that spot on Carlson.
Yeah,
I feel like
that's
that's kind
feasible.
of it. All right,
Yeah.
we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we will touch on the Portland Trailblazers, right?
Yeah.
All right. The Portland Trailblazers, they are a team that are still in very much like wait and see mode with what they're going to do. They are $1.5 million below the tax with a full 15-man roster. They're not going to exceed it for any point this year. They could go up to the first apron, but they're not going to do that. Draft picks wise, it's a little complicated as far as what are all the picks they can trade, because they still owe a lottery protected first round pick uh, that's protected through 2028, I believe. I was feeling it should convey this year, but with all the uncertainty with all their guards, especially Drew Holiday, when is he going to come back? He's been out for like 2 months now. I'm starting to doubt that they're going to have enough to make the playoffs at this point. So maybe that kicks around that we have to wait another year for that. But if that conveys, that opens up a lot more trade possibilities for the Blazers. They'd be able to trade up the 4 first round picks starting this summer, but I don't really see them as an all in type of team, anyways. Uh, but as far as what they should do right now, it's really hard to say, because everything is so up in the air. It's kind of contingent on their guards coming back. Will we need to first see if Drew's going to come back? We need to see if when Scoot's going to come back. Like, I think first and foremost, they need him to come back, see how he looks, because he's their next big upcoming decision. He's going to be extension eligible this summer. Because the big glaring hole on the Blazers is point guard. They don't know if Scoot's going to be that guy. Even if Drew is going to remain playing at a high level, for how long? So it's really hard to know how to answer that while they still need to wait for these guys to come back and play.
Yeah, I think, well, there are a few things we have to talk about. First of all, they closed the season last year playing so well defensively, and they just haven't been that good on defense. And I think that's not the primary concern. The point guard issues are, but they're number 19 in defense, which is like, I had them as maybe like a top 5, top 6 defense coming into the year. Tamani Kamara has not been the same guy. He extended over the offseason. Donovan Clingan has, I think, been worse in a bigger role defensively. Denny Avdia has been way worse on defense. Now, he gets an excuse because he's had to carry such a big offensive load and he's been so good on offense that fine, you can deal with that. But they aren't the defensive team that they thought they were going to be. And they have that glaring hole at point guard that they do need to figure out. They have Damian Lillard coming back next year. I don't think they should plan for Damian Lillard to be Damian Lillard. I think they should plan for him to be like a high minutes backup, or a starter who doesn't play more than like 25 minutes a night, something like that. You bring up that lottery protected pick that they owe Chicago. I have harped on this on a lot of episodes, and I'm going to do it again. It is very important that that pick gets settled one way or another in the near future, because in 2028, the Blazers have swap rights with the Milwaukee Bucks. Given the Giannis Antetokounmpo situation, those swap rights are gold. You cannot risk losing them. But if the Blazers miss the playoffs in 26 and 27 and they make the playoffs in 28, they have to give their pick to Chicago, and therefore they would lose those valuable swap rights with Milwaukee that are frankly among the most valuable things that they own right now. So the first order of business for me, if I'm Portland, is coming to some sort of resolution with the Bulls about how can we deal with this in a way that removes that risk. So I have a couple of ideas. Let's just go through them. Number one, The Blazers trade 5 second-round picks to get that first-round pick back. Some of those second-round picks are pretty interesting. They have Sacramento in 28. They have Indiana or Washington in 29. They have Atlanta next year. Like, how many second-round picks does it take to get that first-rounder back?
Yeah, probably 5-ish.
So in a perfect world, that's what you're doing. But okay, maybe Chicago says, no, we have leverage over you. We're not giving you a first round pick back for a million seconds. Fine, let's talk about some other constructions. Here's a slightly more ambitious one. The Bulls trade Kobe White and that lottery protected Blazers pick to the Bulls for Matisse Thybulle and Portland's unprotected 2027 pick. So basically, the Blazers would would extinguish this obligation now, and they would get Kobe White. In exchange, they're just automatically giving up their 2027 pick next year. I think the idea for Portland would be we get Kobe White and we get Damian Lillard back next year, and we'll be pretty good, so we don't have to worry about that pick hurting us. Does that move you at all?
I think that makes sense because if you're Portland, you're probably thinking we are on the cusp of making the playoffs one of these years. We're going to convey it pretty soon. So if you can just structure it where you're giving the Bulls a definitive pick in one of the next in the next year or two, I
Can't be
think
28,
that
but 27 it can be.
maybe what about even just this year? Is there something they can do to just structure where, okay, here, like we'll give you our unprotected 26, it might end up being like 12, 13. Does Portland want to take that risk and just avoid it and like give up on the lottery in case they
They'd
move
have
up?
to get something back. Like maybe they could do something with Chicago where they get Kobe White back, but they also deal with that pick and some other, like remove the protections on the 26 pick. Chicago just gets what would be like between the 10th and the 14th pick. And they get
No.
something else, and that also gets Kobe White to Portland. Maybe that's the way to do it. Like there are a million different structures here. There's one other one that I
Yeah.
want to bring up. What about Scoot Henderson for Kobe White in that pick?
I don't know if Portland's ready to do that just yet. I think they'll want to just try out Scoot one more time. They still got to see what they got. I'm thinking maybe there's something where they just lower the protection to maybe top 4. Can then if you're the Bulls, you got to be feeling pretty good that pick will convey pretty soon.
Well, can I throw something else out there? What if
Mhm.
instead of lowering the protection, they extend the protection so that it can go out to 29 to 30? So that way, like, do it in such a way where you just take 28 off the table specifically. But, like, here's an idea 2029, Portland has 2 first round picks. They have the best of Milwaukee, Washington, Portland, and they have the worst of Milwaukee. Is it? No, yeah, no, sorry. 2029, they have the best of Milwaukee, Washington, Boston, and they have the worst of Milwaukee, Washington, Boston. Could you do something with Chicago where you just give them the worst of those 3 picks and you settle up right now with the lottery protected pick? Like something like that might be feasible where you go deeper into the future.
I'm not sure how that works within the rules. I don't think you could extend like a pick, but if you're gonna tie it into
Well,
like
you
us
give them the
trading
pick
another
back and you
pick,
do it as a separate trade.
yeah, I think if I'm the Bulls, I want to do something with the Blazers to get just know what that pick's gonna be. I think it'll help both teams. But as what other I don't know what else the Blazers really need to do right now because everything's just so wait and see for them. Like they
I'd
got
like
the
to I'd
like
like to get them another guard.
I've got the only trade I'm really looking at is for like long term stuff. So I'll get to that a little later. It's the same trade I've pitched over and over again. So what do you prefer? Well, you want to get them a new guard? You're saying?
Yeah. So I have a 3-team idea. The Blazers get Colin Sexton and Nick Richards. The Hornets get Robert Williams, Matisse Thybulle, and 2 second-round picks. And the Suns get nothing. They're just dumping Nick Richards, which gets them below the tax.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I for the Blazers, just like a little, just they need a guard right now.
Yeah, exactly.
They've had no point guard for a month and a half at least. More, I think it's been like 2 months now. So yeah, if you can turn Tybal or even Jeremy Grant, those salaries into an extra guard. Because I've even thought, well, what if the Blazers went after like James Harden, even um, for a rental? Now with the Clippers playing a little better, they probably don't want to do that. Just anybody, they need a guard, and I'm sure they can get their guards back. They can't bring back Anthony Simons if they wanted to. They cannot. I mean, yeah, they just, but they should be able to get somebody. Shouldn't be a problem.
They could sign Anthony Simons as a free agent in the offseason. They'll have the mid
Yeah,
level. So like they
yeah,
theoretically could go re-sign him. But
yeah.
yeah, can we just find a way for them to get like a solid bench guard to help weather this storm? I think the Sexton trade makes plenty of sense. And I
Yeah.
think the Hornets would actually kind of like to have Robert Williams. Matisse Thybulle is a name that I've brought up for a few teams. I just like, I'd love it if he got bought out. I just think if he gets healthy, that's a very valuable player for, the minimum or some cheap amount.
Yeah. The only thing I'm hoping the Blazers do is that Jeremy Grant Kyle Kuzma trade that I've pitched in the past month. They've been reporting how the Bucks are interested in Jeremy Grant. That's the obvious trade. Kuzma in a minimum salary for Grant. I think if you're Portland, you're not really going to have much more flexibility to do anything with cap space. I like the idea that because if either they extend Scoot Henderson if he's good, or they could trade for another guard. It's not going to be hard to turn Holiday with his $30 million into another guard. They'll have their options. They have draft picks to do that. I just like the idea where I think you might as well renegotiate Denny Avdia early, where he's gonna make what 40 to $50 million on his next contract. Why not pay him earlier so you can lock him into like maybe something in the low 30s? He still gets the same money, just distributed more evenly. I think that's a better use of their cap flexibility over the next 3 to 4 years than potentially trying to do something in the offseason. And to do that, getting off Grant's extra year while also going from paying him $34 million to Kuzma making $20 million next year, that's a very quick way to do it. I don't. Grant's been playing really well this year for them. That's great. I think they should use his play this year as an opportunity to get off his contract and get some cap flexibility.
We absolutely agree on this, but teams get suckered into believing in their own players all the time. Like Jeremy Grant was bad last year, and I think that's probably mostly what his future holds for him. Just considering how much older he is now, like I don't think Jeremy Grant is this like impact wing, but I think that they're gonna look at this and be like, Jeremy Grant's playing so well. Like, yeah, why would we trade him? They're gonna go back to their dumb old stance where like there were teams offering first round picks for Jeremy Grant in the past, and they never budged, and it was like, no, Jeremy Grant is like one of the most valuable wings in the league. We have to get multiple first round picks back for him. And like after last season, it was like, nope, the clock struck midnight. He's not playing well anymore, and he's super expensive. So you have a bad contract on your hands. I think they should look at this as an opportunity to get off of that contract. I worry they'd be like, no, Jeremy Grant is a core player. We are not just trading him for cap relief.
Was he? What pick did the Blazers initially give up to get him? I'm trying to remember.
I
How it?
think it was 2 picks with Houston, but they were like not good picks.
I'm trying to remember what pick they had because it. I had a feeling it was like the Duran pick, but I don't think that makes sense.
No, oh, I think I remember. They got him for less than we thought they were going to. And the reason for that, I was thinking of Robert Covington that was 2 picks. They're similar players. They didn't get much in the way of pick value because I think the Pistons just wanted to get off the money. So they didn't give up much to get Jeremy Grant, but they took on all the money, as I recall.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to remember what it was. I thought the Blazers traded like a pretty valuable pick for him. I don't know. I'm kind of confused. It was like basically whatever they got for CJ McCollum, they conveyed that into Jeremy Grant. Hopefully, it wasn't any super valuable pick. Anything else on the Blazers, or should we move on to the last team?
Should we? I mean, do we do the LaMelo Ball, Trae Young, John Morant dance with them or no?
I just don't think it's this year. I think that'd be a
Yeah.
this summer thing. They'll have their picking. They can get any of those. I think they can get any of those guys. They have enough stuff to do it.
Yep.
Just
And
depends
you
on.
You hope that Scoot just plays well enough that you don't want to do that, or you hope that somebody better than those guys becomes available. But like, yeah, it's a good position to be in when the position that you need is the one that everybody else seems to have. Like, there are more point guards than there are available point guard jobs and point guard salary slots. So they can
Yeah.
be picky and they can get the one that they want.
And I think ideally it might not even be those guys. I think with the way Drew has worked so well for them early on in the year, they're not going to be able to. I don't know who is the younger version of Drew out there that they can get, but like, what if they want to try to go after Jalen Suggs or Anthony Black? I could see, I think that would be their ideal guard target if they had to trade one. I don't think they can get either of those guys. Uh, so that's the other thing I'm wondering. What is the type of guard they're looking for? Because Ja, LaMelo, they're not defenders like that. They're not going to add to this defensive culture, but they might not have a choice. If those are the best guards they can get, they might just have to settle for one of them.
Or they just like let it ride and they just play this out over several years. Like, the Blazers have not always been rational actors when it comes to team building. They were not a team that when they were bad, they were like, we're eager to tank. They traded for Denny Avdia when they were a lottery team. Like, they tend not to operate under the same like timeline principles that we tend to think that teams should. So they might just be a wild card. Who knows?
Yeah. We'll take one last break. When we come back, Utah Jazz. So the Utah Jazz, they have been once again overachieving compared to where they want their draft position to be, but they might be starting to correct that now. They have a lot of tax space. They're $44 million below the luxury tax, and they have a lot of ways that they can add more salaries. I did float the idea maybe they would be buyers. I'm starting to tamp down on that. I don't think this is the year. If they do buying, it'd be more so like younger players who won't help them in the immediacy, but someone they could see helping down the line. I think they're going to just be in asset accumulation mode once more. So they have, with all this tax space, they have a lot of ways they can add to it, take on a lot of bad money from other teams. They've got a bunch of big trade exceptions, mainly one. They've got that $18 million John Collins trade exception. They could renounce all these exceptions to use some cap space. I don't think that's really what they're going to do. Then they have less spending power. So I could see them using that trade exception. They could also take on more money by trading one of their guys. If they traded Nurkic, for example, they could take back a $28 million player, just as an example. So I think they're probably gonna just try to get some more draft picks, try to maximize the value of their draft picks, see if there's more pick swaps types trades like they did with the Suns last year they could do to have some to increase the quality of their first round picks, but then also see if they can, if there are any rookie scale guys or slightly just past the rookie scale contract, if there's any guys that they see could fit with what they've got going on. I think that's mainly what they're going to be trying to do.
You have not said the name Lowry Markkanen, and even if we don't think he's going to get traded, we should at least do the exercise. So, I think we both agree that Utah's plan is to try to win next year, and having Lowry Markkanen on the team next year is probably an important step towards winning. That being said, we should at least address the idea of like which teams could be interested, who might throw an offer Utah's way that makes sense. The most common team that's been in this mix has been the Detroit Pistons. And something that we've talked about in other episodes is that the Pistons, being as young as they are, their first round picks are just not that valuable. And I know you've pushed back on this idea and like basically argued that any team that's given up 4 first round picks has given up at least one good one. Well, look at Minnesota and Cleveland. Neither of them has given the Jazz a number one or like a top 10 pick since trading for yet. But I don't think either Minnesota or Cleveland is likely to hand over a top 10 pick out of the Donovan Mitchell or Rudy Gobert trades. I don't think the Jazz want to make a trade with the Pistons where they get 4 first round picks and it's like number 29, number 24, number 22, number 18. I think if they're trading Lauri Markkanen, it has to be one asset that they view as somewhat premium has to be involved in that. And we know that that's how they're thinking because they traded the 3 bad first round picks to Phoenix last year for the 1 very good one. They are thinking about premium assets right now. They're not thinking about asset volume. So I think that takes Detroit off of the table. The teams that might make any measure of sense. I looked at San Antonio because San Antonio has picks from other teams. I think the money and just given how well they've played is probably a bit unrealistic. Like obviously right now they have Harper and Castle on long-term deal or on rookie deals that are pretty cheap. I think if they're giving up a bunch of picks, they want somebody who can fit into their longer-term salary structure. I don't think they would trade everything for Markkanen and have him for 3 years before like panic. We have to consider trading him or trading Fox or whatever. So I think San Antonio's out. I did land on one team that I think kind of makes some sense. There's one team out there that has a bad contract that I think would make sense as the matching salary and has external picks that could be traded for Markkanen while also having a need at power forward. Do you want to guess who that team is?
No, I can't.
The Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh wow.
Is there a trade of hypothetically, say the Jazz called Philly and they said, we will take Paul George and we'll take Andre Drummond too. We'll get you out of the luxury tax. We want both of those Clipper picks and we want 2 of your own picks. Does Philly consider that at all? The idea being you would then have Maxey, Edgecombe, Grimes, and Markkanen, I guess, with Embiid, who, by the way, Embiid is playing well right now. Like, you could just roll with that team and try to win the East this year. Do they consider that?
So let's get into details what those picks would be. The Clippers pick in 28,
28 and a swap in 29.
and then a Sixers picks in what
I'll
years?
say 30 and 32.
So all the picks that they could trade, basically.
Basically, yeah.
I think with Utah, there are some trades that, yeah, you're going to get worse in the short term. But if you can get some, what at least is going to be a high likelihood of 2 lottery picks for Larry Markkinen, I think you strongly consider it. So I could see Utah doing it. I don't see Philly doing that. I think they'll probably want to preserve them. I think those Clippers picks, like, you got to hold on to them right now.
The other thing that's going on for Philly is that Embiid is playing great. Like his last 7, 8 games has been very, very good. And Paul George, like he's not scoring at an all-star level. He's just like, quietly playing good basketball, especially on defense. Like I know we think of like Paul George as this like great all-time stopper on defense, like a man-to-man guy. Maybe at his peak in Indiana he was. The thing about Paul George defensively that's always been so valuable is his help defense. And he has been great as a help defender lately for Philly. Will that persist? Will he get hurt again? I don't know. I think Philly is perfectly happy with what they have, but this was the one team out there that kind of made any sense. Unless like Chicago wanted to go balls to the wall for him, and I don't think they do.
I do think Philly and Utah could be trade partners anyways. I was thinking about if the Jazz would be interested in trading for Quentin Grimes. They could trade for him. That would help get Philly under the tax. So they're giving up something to the Sixers. They're giving them some value. Um, the Jazz could just outright sign him in free agency. So there's that. But they could use his cap hold if they just want to bring him in now. They lose his bird rights, but then they could use his cap hold to re-sign him on something a little bigger. You know what? Never mind. They could just sign him in free agency.
Well, I think Quentin Grimes is going to have a pretty robust market. So I would be a little scared if I was a team that wants to sign Quentin Grimes over the summer. Like, is there a world where Utah could trade for Quentin Grimes, renounce their trade exceptions, and renegotiate and extend him now? Or can you not do that? You give up the bird rights.
No,
Yeah,
you can't. You cannot.
I think Quentin Grimes is going to have a pretty strong free agent market. Like he is one of many very interesting Laker targets to me. So I don't know that you really want to jump the gun on that. But if you want to try to sign him over the summer, I do think that makes some sense. We've seemed to have exhausted the Lowry Markkanen conversation. There just doesn't seem to be anything there.
Yeah, I think the time to trade Lowry has mostly passed.
Yes.
And I think if I had to guess, I think Utah probably would have gotten more value had they traded him last year or the year before. It's just now that the closer we get to next year, once this pick situation gets settled one way or another, they're pretty close, I think, especially with the steps DeAndre George has taken, and Lowry's still looking like an awesome player, and some like you can't really say like you could say I look at the Utah team like it's small, it's baby steps like uh Bryce Sensabaugh starting to look a little better. Isaiah Collier's looking a little better. Like all these guys are taking small steps. I think they're going to be a pretty good team next year, like a play-in range team.
Yep.
So now that we're getting pretty close, I just think it's going to get way harder and harder to trade Lowry. And I'm sure he would have some agency in this too. The team that I like the most for Lowry is the Spurs. But if you're the Spurs and you're not going to give up any of your guards and you only want to offer firsts, Utah's not really going to be in the business of trading for first, especially ones that probably none of them are going to be
You
like
need the
super
external
high.
first. You
Yeah,
need the Sacramento 2031, basically.
I don't think that's enough at this point. And the Spurs don't really have anyone like, is Carter Bryant going to make it appealing for the Jazz? I don't think so.
I mean, I
So
really like Carter Bryant, but I think the thing that makes Carter Bryant appealing is that his defensive upside really helps on a team with Lowry Markkanen. And if you don't have Lowry Markkanen,
yeah.
that obviously changes things.
So I would be surprised if he gets traded at this point. I think the Jazz, I think there's some truth to the idea that they're ready to start winning soon and that they want to keep him. I just, they have to say that they're not trying to lose this year, but I think that they will. I think they'll be able to lose enough to be positioned to not lose that pick. They need to be like fourth worst, I think. I got to check
To
what the actual
guarantee it,
percentage,
yeah.
the
If you
guarantee
get
it,
to
but
like 6, you're fine.
here, I'm on Pinkathon right now. Let's see what the percentages are. They have a basically, what are the percentage? You want to get to, I'm not going to be able to understand this quick enough.
You want to get to 6. They're in 7th right now. If you're in 6th, then 2 teams between 7 and 14. No, 3 teams between 7 and 14 would need to jump you to lose your pick.
Okay. Base odds without the tie. No, never mind. So, yeah, either way, I'm not even going to get into Lowry trades. I think that ship has sailed. Any salary dumps you think are
I
worth
have the
getting
trade.
into?
Okay. I have it right here in front of me. Danny Ainge wants to do Boston a favor to the old ties. The Jazz can get the Celtics out of the luxury tax. Yusuf Nurkic for Anthony Simons and Sam Hauser. The Jazz would get Boston's 2026 first round pick, which will be in the 20s somewhere. And they get New Orleans' 2026 second round pick, which will be 31, 32, 33, something like that. So basically, you get 2 picks in the 25 to 35 range. You take on 8 million more this year between Simons and Nurkic. And you have Sam Hauser on a long-term deal. But I actually think they wouldn't mind having Sam Hauser as a reserve. He's had a bad shooting year, but I think you hope that if he just shoots normally, that's a fine contract moving forward, and you want to have a good shooter on your team somewhere. So I think that makes a ton of sense for both sides. Helps Boston duck the tax this year and next year because you get off of the Hauser money. I think that's one of the easiest trades of the deadline.
Yeah. Maybe Utah just throws in like 1 second to help Boston, but no, that makes a lot of sense. That's so that works because you could do Nurkic for Simons and then they put the Hauser into that trade exception. So
exactly. Yeah. That's the easiest trade of the deadline to me. I think both these teams should run this deal in now. And by the way, Boston could probably get some minutes out of Nurkic.
Yeah, that's true. Right now, because they've been doing fine. It's mainly Keita and Garza right now. If you can get in just one more vet, I think you could feel pretty decent about. I don't think they're. Well, let's. Do you think that's where's Boston right now in the hierarchy for you? Do you think they could potentially beat the Pistons in the playoffs if they get another veteran big?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what Tatum's going to be if and when he comes back. And I also quietly, I know they never admit this out loud. I wouldn't really want Tatum playing 2025 playoff games this spring. I would want to, like, I'm happy to bring him back, but if I'm bringing him back, it would be at like 20 minutes a game. I don't want him playing super intense. I do not want him guarding centers, which this roster would set him up to do more than he would like, or I would like if I were running Celtics. If I were Boston, my main goal is set myself up to duck the tax the next 2 years, reset that clock. But next year, you actually go get a veteran center and you try to win as you're doing that. But I am not trying to win the East if I'm Boston, or at least I'm not going out of my way trying to force that to happen and like make this the timeline. I would just be very scared of Tatum coming back on like March 1st. And then on May 1st, he's playing like deep playoff games that are super intense. I just think that's too much risk for my taste.
I'm looking at Dallas. If maybe there's like a pick swap they could do. You dump Klay Thompson. Do they trade some first? Do they have any extra first incoming, like that Lakers first in 29?
27.
What if
Oh, you're talking about
what
the
oh
Mavericks. Yeah, the Mavericks.
here,
Have
how
29.
about
The
this?
Lakers. Yeah.
How about this trade? The Mavericks trade Klay Thompson into the Jazz, that trade exception. So that doesn't that like gets them just within like a hair of ducking the tax. Uh in exchange, they trade the Jazz at 29 Lakers first, and the Jazz give them the 27 Lakers first. What do you think about that?
I don't think that's enough value because I think both of those picks in 27 and 29 are going to be pretty bad because Luka's going to be on the Lakers, or we presume he'll be on the Lakers. I would just take the Clay contract to get the 29 Laker first, but I don't think Dallas would do that. So, yeah, I just don't think there's enough of a value gap between the 27 Laker first and the 29 Laker first. If the Lakers were still, well, no, even then, but like that Laker first has become less valuable. When the Lakers made that trade and they gave up Russell Westbrook and they were built around LeBron and AD, that Laker 2027 pick, top four protected, was very, very interesting. Now it's much, much less valuable because Luka is there. They had this couple happen a couple of times where they trade for picks that look better in the moment than they actually functionally turn out to be. Like 2029, they'll have the two most favorable of their own, Cleveland and Minnesota. Cleveland and Minnesota 2029 looked more interesting a few years ago than it does now. At this point, you're kind of just sitting there thinking, unless Anthony Edwards asks for a trade between now and then, those Cleveland and Minnesota picks are probably second half of the first round.
So here's the rationale for Utah to do this. It's that when they got that 27 first from the Lakers, the Lakers' outlook was just not exciting at all. They were just going to run. Like you couldn't imagine they're going to be able to turn Anthony Davis into Luka Doncic. In which case, by 2027, the Lakers were probably going to start to be on the decline. If not this year, then probably next year. But now with this trade, okay, you don't get the 27 Lakers first. You kick the can down the road to 2029. That is going to be the season after Luka's player option. So you just get a little more time on the Lakers' outlook just in case Luka maybe it doesn't work out with the Lakers. Maybe he wants to go somewhere else. I don't anticipate that. But that's the main value. You're just betting that, okay, this 27 pick isn't going to amount to much. Let's just buy a little bit more time. And if it means just taking on this little bit of extra money, so be it.
I just don't think that pick is good enough. If the Mavericks had, or if the, not even that, like you're taking on
an extra
4 or
year.
5
Yeah.
You're taking on an extra year. So like if you look at the total cash outlay, it's like an extra $20 million to swap first round picks, and it's not a very valuable pick. And aside from the cash outlay, the cap outlay is $32 million or whatever. It's 2 years of Clay at 16. That's just not enough value. I'd have to get the pick outright to consider that. And I don't think Dallas should do that.
No, absolutely not.
No.
I'm trying to see if there's like some other type of swap. It could be like Kyle Anderson. No, he's not guaranteed next year, so that's not really like. Is there some extra money the Jazz could send out for next year to offset some of the extra money from Clay? But they don't have any. Like it's just Lowry and then their rookie scale guys basically.
Yep.
So they're not.
No,
that's none of it is bad money.
They have 3 players with positive EPMs on the team. It's Lowry Markkanen, Keontae George, and Walker Kessler played 5 games. Like, it's one of the weirdest rosters I think I've ever seen, where Lowry is there and then everybody else is on a rookie deal, or it's just like Svi Luke or Kevin Love, where it's just like random older dudes who aren't going to be a part of the future.
Either way, I would be keeping an eye on the Jazz trying to do something with that Lakers pick because next year they're going to have 3 first round picks for 2027 uh, between their own, the better of Cleveland, Minnesota, and then that Lakers pick. I could see them trying to either maybe just turn the lesser of their 27 pick just to try to get like an extra pick maybe in this year's draft. Right now, they only have, if they keep their own pick, their own, I'm sure they'd like one more in what's going to be a pretty good draft. That's what I'm looking to. I think that's kind of what I'm looking at. And then in the process, take in some bad money to incentivize the other team.
I think if you're trading the Laker pick, what you do is you look for a team that needs help with the Stepien rule. Like give that pick to the Bucks so the Bucks can then trade their 2026 pick or something. And that's what you're probably trying to do because I don't think late 2027 first round picks, given what we think about that draft right now, are all that valuable, but they might be circumstantially valuable to a team that needs to duck the Stepien rule.
All right. Anything else on the Jazz, or should we close this out?
I think we are all set on the Jazz, so let's close it out.
All right, guys. So read CVS Sports as per usual. Subscribe to Third Apron wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to the Substack. I wrote something on the Michael Porter Jr. trade. We talked about Michael Porter Jr. in our last episode. Check that out. We also made some predictions for the short, middle, and far term. And be on the lookout. Sam and I have been pretty active. The 3 shows last week, and I'm sure they will ramp up. We'll have some live episodes if some breaking news happens. So be on the lookout for all that. Thanks, everyone.